allergies have somehow forced me to lose my voice partially, so we're going to compose ourselves and do the best we can here. I've always said, I'm a nobody, and what I mean by that is I'm just a fan. That's what I am when it comes to these properties. I like these characters, I like to see them respected, I like when they're good. I'm going to be honest, sometimes I even think they're fun when they're not good, and no matter what it is that I like. Things like Transformers, a lot of those don't have great, amazing stories for the Michael Bay films, but sometimes I like unplugging, watching some hot girls make out on the hood of a car, I guess with a guy. Could have been a better movie. And, watching these massive Transformers fight each other. And what I'm getting at with this is that Gotham Knights has been, kind of lambasted by a lot of people, and I know partially by me as well, but there is a reason for that I wanted to talk about. I've seen a lot of people say, you're being too hard on this game. It's not out. You need to give this game a chance. I actually agree with that. I agree that you need to give stuff a chance, and that I think when it's not even out yet, you really only have what they tell you to go off of. You can make some judgments off of that, but without playing the game, I understand that there's an argument to be had there. So let's talk about it a little bit. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more content. We are at over 109,000 subscribers at this point, which is awesome. And thanks to you. And I hope to keep growing for years to come, being here to entertain you. There was a big reveal a few weeks back with more information on Gotham Knights, and this is something I wanted to talk about because I want to justify my position on a couple of things. I think if you're going to have an opinion, you should at least be able to back it up, whether people agree with you or not. Now, the overwhelming amount of you did agree with me. I mean, it was like a 94%, like rate. It was like one of the most likes I've ever gotten on a video, so clearly people stuck around at least enough to listen and actually like what I had to say. But, to that other 6% that was very vocal, I think the thing with this is a lot of people misunderstood my complaint on this game, which is that it's not coming to PS4 or Xbox One, and they immediately typed, "You gotta let that go, it's the past, it's old technology, blah, blah, blah." Yeah, I get that. Like, I'm not even trivializing that argument. It is older technology. That's why I have a PS5, that's why I have a gaming PC, that's why I have an Xbox Series X. I also do have previous generations of consoles as well, because I love video games. To me, they're not a disposable experience that just goes away or gets bad just because something new comes out, so I like those old ones too. But the reason that I care about that is because of console availability and the promise that was made. You have to understand, there's a reason why I don't have that complaint about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. If you want to limit your initial buy-in or your initial consumer base, right, by just the new tech, like PC, Series X, PS5 only, fine. That's your choice to do. And you must have made that decision for a reason. So for something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, the argument that, well, it was done so that this game could be as good as possible on newer technology. They used that as the baseline. That is a fine argument. I know some people won't agree with that argument, but I'm fine with it. My issue is that a lot of the people complaining about my take on this, I don't think you understand a portion of game development. And what that means is this is coming from somebody who's been playing video games for over 20 years. This is coming from somebody who has friends who work in the gaming industry, friends who work in everything from coding to QA. I have behind the scenes looks on all kinds of stuff. Not that I'm an expert, but what I mean by that is that there is always a baseline. Okay, if you look at something like minimum system requirements on a PC, that means this game's going to kind of run okay at this system requirement. If you have anything below this, you probably don't want to bother. And that actually applies as well for consoles. It's just not on there because consoles are done differently, right? They are a static release where you have the hardware as it is now. Maybe there's going to be an updated version of the hardware like a PS5 Pro eventually or something like that. But really, it's just PS4, PS5, PS6, etc. And then there are sometimes some little steps in between, unlike something like a computer. So the issue with that is then when you're releasing cross-generational, right? You're releasing last gen and this new gen, you already picked your baseline. Your baseline was last gen. Basically, what I mean by that is that you need to get that game running at least competently on that generation that you now promised it to run on. Well, Jay, maybe that's why they canceled it. Yes, and maybe it is. The issue with that, it was less than 6 months before the supposed release that they did cancel it. And most people had already bought into that promise who were fans of like DC and Batman and all this other stuff because whether you like it or not, in most areas, getting a PS5 or an Xbox Series X is not super easy unless you're willing to shell out about $1,000 of US dollars. There are places you can get them much cheaper. I've seen stolen ones sold for below retail. That you can do that if you really want to. Not smart, but you can associate yourself with that. And I've seen scalped ones for a little bit above retail, like I'm talking $650, $700, when people get a ton of them and they're trying to offload them. But a lot of times that median price is sitting anywhere from like $675 to $800 still. The MSRP for that is around $500 US dollars. Because of this, and the fact that these things are already novelty items that are expensive to afford, there are a lot of people who can't afford that or just don't want it right now. Both are valid options. It's your money to spend the way you want, who are already promised a version of that game on the hardware that they owned. So when people argue, well, now that it's been cut out, that means that it's going to be a much better experience. From one hand, if it was just going to be absolute dog shit on that console, sure. It never should have been promised in the first place if you couldn't deliver, but fine. But the issue with that is that promise was already made, and it doesn't change the technical requirements anymore. And what I mean by that is that baseline, that had already been there for years of development. They had been developing a game that they were making able to run on the next gen and the previous gen. That doesn't just go away when you get rid of the previous gen 5.5 months before release. I think some people need to understand that, because what you usually do when this happens is you just don't announce it for that previous generation because you don't want that old tech to hold it back, if that's what you want to call it. You don't get rid of it 5 months before. You're not going to reverse engineer the game and be able to, pick up the pieces in that time, right? You're not going to transfer it to a new engine that is basically designed just for PS5 and Series X. You're just not going to be able to. What you're going to be able to do is optimize that game for those systems that are still there, which is good, but you can very easily tell that this was still meant to be a last generation game. Look at the graphics. I hate to be that person who compares everything to Arkham, because to be honest, those people are very annoying. But there's a reason why people complained that Arkham Knight looked a lot better in a lot of its reveals and even in a lot of its gameplay back in 2015. Then this was looking in gameplay shown in 2022. That's not good. There's over a generation of almost a generation of console hardware separating them. And what I mean by that is that we're talking mid PS4, not super early, but not super late, versus early PS5. There should be a pretty big difference there that we're able to see and be impressed by. I'm not even a graphics guy, but that's just kind of an expectation, especially from a AAA developer and a huge company worth tons and tons of money. We're just not seeing that. I think that that's one reason a lot of people have been very hard on this game, is because it doesn't look like a next-gen game. And, I understand the argument, well, Jay, you say graphics don't matter that much. I actually agree with that. I think a lot of times it doesn't matter how good or bad your game looks within reason. It matters how fun it is. But then we actually take a look at the gameplay itself and the fact that characters like Nightwing or Red Hood kind of pinball across the map, but the movements don't look fluid. They don't look human. They look very disconnected. There's even frames you can see where Nightwing is punching and he's not really hitting anybody. It's just kind of swinging by them. And these are issues that Arkham did have sometimes, but they were rarities back in 2015 and earlier. And so I think now when you're bringing people in and you have established yourselves as the Arkham people, with both WB Games Montreal with Origins, which I think is severely underrated, and then Rocksteady now making Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, I think people are going to hold you to that standard of previous things that you made, whether or not people think that's fair or not. If you look at my channel, I know that my views are not as good as they used to be on some stuff, and they're better on others, but what I always try and strive to do is make videos as good or better than I did a year ago. And what I mean by that is I never want to make a video just absolute crap, or I never want to make it like, wow, this is in 240p. What happened? Like, why does this look like it was made 10 years ago? 2022? What's going on? Did he have a breakdown? Is he okay? Like, what is he, uploading from the library? What's happening here? I think that you need to try and reach the baseline as well of the things you made in the past and make your new thing as good or better than that, even if it's a totally different type of game in terms of its quality. And I think that a lot of people are looking back at that and just kind of frustrated. I also do believe that with this, it's really kind of a cherry on top of a shit sundae when you start to look at things like the pre-order bonuses. Like, for example, a lot of people have been very critical of some of the costume designs, which I know, nerdy stuff, but then you look at the more classic costume designs, and those are only available from the deluxe edition, like paying more money. I'm sure there will be an offer to, throw some money at it after launch, but then you even have these classic costumes locked behind a higher pay-in, and people were already rightfully, kind of skeptical of these games because of everything that happened with Avengers. Different company, but a fairly same looking gameplay in different ways, where you have the numbers of the RPG systems and the traversal, and, it just kind of left a bad taste for some people with Avengers comparisons that I think WB could really do good disproving, and going further into and making it look a lot less like that. I don't really think they have. On top of that, you've also had the problem of the release date marketing. Yes, this game has been moved, but it's not really even that. I agree with the Miyamoto quote. I know it's overused, and I'm going to butcher it. The idea that eventually a delayed game can be good. And the idea of that is you don't release it when it's not done. But a rushed game won't really ever be good, right? So I think that that's a good thing, actually, to move that date back to match what you're able to deliver. But I think the problem is then when you're moving that date back and then, basically canceling out all the people who are probably your main primary audience, teenagers mostly, and young adults who have money enough for video games, but they're not a millionaire and they're not going to go out and get $1,000 console. I think when you're actually pushing that group out so that they don't have the ability to buy it, and now you're delivering a game that still looks like it's made for last gen, that's kind of where it's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. There were already complaints about this game way back, when we were starting to see gameplay, that it didn't look like a PS5, Xbox Series X type game. So, when you have those people already upset that are on that current hardware and now they're the only people you're targeting, I think you're kind of kneecapping your ability to actually release the game competently and well. Now, Jay, what would you have done? Well, first off, it's easy to criticize anything from my chair, and I understand that. I always say that and admit that. But I really do think it would have been good to kind of go not the cyberpunk route of like releasing crap, but the route of, hey, let's delay that last generation release. Now, Cyberpunk did it the opposite way and really obliterated themselves. Like there is no trust there anymore with CD Projekt Red from a lot of people. But what I mean by that is if that PS4 and Xbox One generation version isn't ready, but the PS5 version really is going to be, okay, well then if you really want to release that for an initial push to next gen, you can do that. You can also always delay the previous generation and release it later. You have the ability to do that. You're a huge company. You have so much money above you funneled into this, and there have been so many projects canceled over the years that I think bad will is still lingering around with both WB Games Montreal and Rocksteady, whether it's like never picked up Superman pitches or picked up Superman pitches that never went anywhere, or Batman Beyond-esque Arkham games that didn't happen. All this stuff is kind of hovering over this game like a cloud, including everything we talked about in this video. And I think that it's made a lot of people very frustrated and annoyed with Gotham Knights before it's even come out. Now, I know most of the people who are going to be mad about this video or the previous video didn't stick around to this point, but I always say I want everything to be good. I really do. I gain nothing out of something being bad. I was excited for Marvel's Avengers. I hoped it would be good. Hell, I tried to convince myself that it was great for a while, and just kind of look past the faults on it. And I really, really do hope that this game is good as well. I really do. And I hope that it comes out and surprises me and surprises everybody, and that it's just a knockout 10 out of 10 game. It doesn't matter that they, are kind of picking up from Nightfall, but it's its own continuity. It doesn't matter that it's got some issues here and there, some blemishes. It's a good core experience. That's what I want. Now, if it is that, I will absolutely be super happy. I'm not saying it won't be. It's not even like man, I'll eat my words. My thing is just I think people have a right to criticize this a little bit because of everything around and hanging over the game that has really frustrated a lot of people for a long time, myself included on some of this. It's just kind of a big, almost an FU to a lot of fans when you make promises to them and you get rid of those, even if it doesn't affect me. And it's also a bit of an FU when you try and justify those promises with vague justifications, or you try and justify getting out of those promises with vague justifications. And I think a lot of people see through that now with companies, and they're just over it. That's not to, and I will throw in as a final thought here, that's not even to mention everything with like a lack of faith in the possible Discovery merger, in the, restore the Snyderverse, in the Amber Heard situation and Johnny Depp and Ezra Miller and all this other stuff. Like WB as a parent company has a lot of shit surrounding them that a lot of people have run out of patience for. And I do think that there is some bias around that as well that has been dragged onto this, that's made the reception a little harsher than it probably normally would be. I think that's fair to admit that people have just kind of hit a breaking point with WB in a lot of ways. And I think that they need to clean up their act and get that, fan relationship kind of back up, where people are at least fooled enough to think that they're cared about, or that WB is interested in their opinion, even if they're not, like any company really isn't. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. This is a little longer than I expected it to be, especially with losing my voice, but I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to actually lay out my thoughts here. Please let me know what you think. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. I appreciate you very, very much as we continue to grow. And I will have some videos actually in the end screen here, because we make a lot of stuff over here, and a lot of it's never shown to anybody by YouTube. So I'd appreciate you checking it out. Have a fantastic day. As always, everyone, stay shui.